Thank you for joining us at Heads Talking Politics. I'm Dave Papa Giorgio, and in today's episode, we're going to discuss how Bernie Sanders would be attacked in the general, should he make it that far. Because you never know. And also because going back to 2016, Hillary suggested she was somehow more progressive than Bernie, when not even Flo from Progressive is more progressive than Bernie. Bernie Sanders hasn't really been attacked, not really, and I'm just concerned that any attack in the general would be brutal. So brutal. And so what we're going to do is give Bernie Sanders a flu shot to inoculate him against what's coming. Now, the first thing you need to know about Bernie Sanders, strategy-wise, is that he is a... Bernie, how you doing, Dove?
Well, I got this fakakta light shining on my head, but,
You look terrific. We were just talking about how I think you should...
Dave, I don't think you should do this show.
Bernie, listen to me. You got to get your sea legs for the general. You got to get prepared. You understand what I'm saying?
I understand what you're talking about. Best I can do is try.
All right, well, we're going to beat you up a little bit here, okay?
That doesn't sound too good to me.
Don't worry. We'll give you countermeasures at the end to help you win in the general.
Well, I trust your judgment, okay? If you need anything from me, you'll let me know.
Thank you, Bernie. I appreciate it. Bernie Sanders, everyone. All right, so you know what we're going to do. In part 1, we tear him down. In part 2, we build him back up. Now, if you're a Bernie lover, part 1 might make you feel a little squeamish or angry and defensive. I understand. Listen to your godfather, huh? Okay? Everything here is factual, and it's always better to get ahead of problems so they don't cause you trouble down the road. And conservative, you're going to love this episode because we're going to beat up your favorite guy, Uncle Bernie. So there's something for everyone. All right, so with part 1 and attack 1, let's go to our man on the street. Archie, what's your take on Bernie Sanders?
He's a socialism-loving pinko commie, eh?
Democratic socialism and communism are not the same thing, but that won't stop opponents from painting Bernie Russian red. Now, Bernie's positions are democratic socialist, but he has flirted with communism in the past, like a drunk salesman at a convention.
You know, I've always admired a full-figured ideology. Did you know that?
Back in the 1980s, Bernie was excited that Fidel Castro made the revolution in Cuba.
But I remember, for some reason or other, being very excited when Fidel Castro made the revolution in Cuba.
I found it appropriate that poor people were rising up against ugly rich people.
And it was just seemed right and appropriate that poor people were rising up against rather ugly rich people.
Way to bring people together, Bernie. And he also railed against JFK's hard stance against communism, saying it made him want to puke.
And Kennedy was playing the conservative. And actually, when you read novels, people say there's a sick feeling in your stomach. Usually I'm sufficiently unemotional not to be sick, but I actually got up from the room and almost left to puke.
JFK? You talking about JFK? I don't see nobody else here. You must be talking about JFK. All right, so here's the question. Is it possible that America could vote in the general for a Democrat who was critical of JFK? I mean, isn't that like being critical of Abraham Lincoln?
Oh, I've always hated Abraham Lincoln with his liberal free the slaves and whatnot.
And with all this praise of Castro, saying he's not all that bad because of some social programs, it reminds me of when people praise Mussolini because he made the trains run on time. And when you hear people say things like that, it makes you think this person has a screw loose. And all this talk about Castro, you can forget about Florida in the general election. Where'd that sound effect come from? Breaking news. Did you steal that from Rachel Maddow? I'm Biff Ankerman with this special report. Bernie Sanders is a communist. Back to you, Dave. The conservatives would seize on all this. I can see the memes now, pictures of JFK with the words, "I fought communism in the 1960s so you wouldn't have to." It's coming. There are those who say Bernie and Trump are the same guy. No, really. All right, I'll give you that they have totally different policies. They grew up very differently. They have totally different hairstyles. Trump gets driven around in a limo, and Bernie drives around in a Subaru Forester. But electing Bernie gets you more of what we have in Trump. Consider, both cry victim. Both hate the press. Both are stubbornly locked into their own ideologies. Both have a segment of worshipping fans who repeat their words with religious fervor. I hate to tell you, but these are the attributes of a cult leader. These are not the droids you're looking for. Both hate Nancy Pelosi. I mean, with Trump, you can kind of understand it, different parties, but why would a Democrat in Bernie hate Nancy? It's like he's mad at his mom for telling him to clean up his room. Bernie, go clean up your room and knock it off with that communism crap, huh? In response to Bernie declaring war on the Democratic establishment, according to Chris Cillizza, longtime party strategist Joe Lockhart tweeted, "The Democratic establishment gave us civil rights, voting rights, the assault weapons ban, Social Security, and Medicare. So how can you lead the Democratic Party when the Democratic Party is the enemy?" House and Senate seats will be lost with Bernie at the top. Why? Because he only likes socialists. He doesn't like anyone else. He thinks everyone else is corrupt. The establishment, the elite. He says these things every single day. You know I'm telling you the truth. So how does it play out down ticket? We lose the House and more of the Senate, and now you got Bernie Sanders in the White House, alone, isolated, with nothing but executive power and a handful of fanatical supporters to support him. So sad. So very, very sad. Well, at least the White House has a bowling alley. And now here's attack point number 3. Bullies. Both have fanatics at the extreme of their movement, who, when pressed into action, will bully. You got Trump bullies, you have Bernie bullies, we've seen them both. It stems from the fact that both Trump and Bernie project, "I'm the only one," and that no one else will do.
Trump's the only one who can do what he did. I hope he runs for 3 more terms. I would rather have Bernie's brain in a fishbowl.
And that's okay for most people. It's just the crazies you have to watch out for. Elizabeth Warren recently called out the bullies for really ugly stuff, quote unquote. She pointed out the online harassment of union leaders in Nevada because they liked their current health plan. That's all. They just liked what they liked. I mean, this is America. I like what I like. You like what you like. We get along. So these Bernie fanatics, they published the home addresses and phone numbers of these 2 innocent immigrant women who are tough women, who run labor organizing campaigns, who for the first time in their lives feared for the safety of their lives and the lives of their families. So with Bernie, you get the same fanaticism as with Trump, the same bullies on social media, but with Bernie's Brooklyn accent. "I am going to terrorize you into doing what I want you to do. Let me be clear." And here's attack point number 4. Putin's cow. While it's clear Putin wanted Trump last time, I would not be surprised if Putin was okay with Bernie this time around. Why? Because Putin has milked the cow of Trump. I know that's a disturbing image. Meaning that he's gotten what he wanted out of Trump. Syria, anybody? So what would Putin like now? How about maybe a new cow? And it's not just because of Bernie's communist leanings.
I was very excited and impressed by the Cuban Revolution.
But because going from the extreme in Trump to Bernie, who's the extreme opposite of Trump, would be chaos. And if you've followed the presidential pendulum swing over the years a long time like I have, you'd see how we went from Nixon to Carter to Reagan and Bush to Clinton, then to another Bush, then to Obama, and then to Trump, and now to Bernie, these extremes.
I like to swing. Yeah, I'm a swinger. But not like what this guy says. Let me tell you.
Recently published in GQ magazine, Russian political scientist Gleb Pavlovsky said, "The ideal scenario is to maintain the schism and uncertainty in the states till the end. Our candidate is chaos." The additional chaos of such a wide pendulum swing, buttressed with right-wing blowback, the likes of which no one can even calculate, they were just getting started with Obama, and with Bernie being uncompromising, which is both a blessing and a curse, it would keep America mired in partisan politics and bickering and dissent for God knows how long. "Mr. Putin, the U.S. is on fire. Quick, get the water hose." Putin, "Yes, it isn't yet," which means, I'm busy right now. Don't laugh at that. That's not funny. Quit that laughing. Love you can bank on. Bernie hates the banks. He wants revenge because they are rich and they got a bailout, even though the entire U.S. economy was going to explode. Bernie Sanders hates the banks. Back to you, Dave. He hates Wall Street because they make money and Bernie hates wealth. I get it. Look, there's too much wealth at the top. All the Democrats want to fix that. They want to tax upper income. They want to limit Wall Street, limit capitalism, and so on and so forth. But is it possible to get somebody in here, anybody, who doesn't hate anybody? Huh? I mean, good Lord, Trump hates Muslims. Trump hates Mexicans. He hates workdays. He'd rather be playing golf. Enough with the hate already. And now here's attack point number 6. Ideology. Here's something kind of serious. Bernie has demonstrated that he cares more about ideology than actual people. Consider this. He voted against the bailout of the auto industry. If he'd had his way, over 1 million jobs would have been lost. Think about that. Over 1 million jobs, manufacturing jobs. But he cared more about slaying a giant because he doesn't like anybody or anything that gets too big. Bernie Sanders hates big things. He voted against comprehensive immigration reform in 2007. It wasn't a perfect bill. It had a flawed guest worker segment in it, which is the part that Bernie called akin to slavery. But it would have impacted millions of people positively. It included all of the Dreamers bill. All of it. Plus other things that conservatives and liberals both liked. A judge once told me that if both sides are unhappy, it's probably a fair compromise. You see, Bernie's problem, demonstrated over his entire career, is that he can't handle the fact that lasting progress sometimes comes in waves. He couldn't just take what he could get. So being ideologically pure is a sure way to get nothing done because you ignore the rest of the country, the rest of the government even, that might not buy into your ideology. Unless your ideology is bar bands and whiskey. And now, here's attack point number 7. Foreign policy. Bernie has some strongly liked positions in foreign policy. Stopping the endless wars, ending the funding of the Saudi-led Yemen conflict, buttressing the United Nations, peace, negotiation, free continental breakfast. But I'd bet that conservatives will latch onto the fact that Bernie has suggested, circumstantially, ending aid to Israel. The key word is circumstantially, meaning that Israel would have to meet certain conditions to continue getting aid. In other words, using the aid as leverage to get Israel to sue for peace and make other concessions. The conservatives and Trump are going to use Bernie's strategy, which some might call reasonable, to accuse Bernie of being anti-Israel, anti-Semitic, or even pro-terrorist by categorizing Palestinians as nothing but terrorists. But as long as Bernie is offering continental breakfast, he's got my vote. Now it's time for us to pick Bernie back up and show him how he can win in a general, if he were to make it that far, because you never know. Number one, okay, for Bernie to negate the video footage of the 80s, he just has to respond with, "This is clear proof that I have always been opposed to regime change and the kind of destructive foreign policy that we've seen in South America, in the Middle East, in Asia. If we hadn't interfered in Central America, we wouldn't have the immigrants coming up from the South because their country was ruined by our intervention." I don't know what degree that's true, but it's a hell of an argument, and I've never heard Bernie make it, so take it. It's on the house. My compliments. And he also has to stop saying the communists aren't all that bad. Is that so much to ask? Number two, Bernie really does need to try to get along better with those who are liberal, but not quite as progressive as he is. And this means the Democratic Party, the press. I don't think we can tolerate another president who has declared war against the press and seeks to undercut them at every opportunity like we've had for the past 3 years. It's enough already. Bernie needs to show everyone he can be a team leader and not just a revolutionary. In other words, do a seance, channel a little bit of Joe Biden, huh? Get a little bit of that Joe Biden in there. Fantastic. Number three, regarding bullies, Bernie just needs to disavow them, unlike what Trump does, which is encourage them. If I were Bernie, I'd be super strong about this. If the revolution is going to happen, let it happen without bullying. Who needs bullying? We need to be able to agree to disagree again, which we haven't been able to do for a very long time. Bernie, you need to be at the forefront of that. Number four, Bernie's got to be tough on Russia. I mean, Putin is not an enemy, but he's a political opponent. That won't be the case for long if Putin feels like he can get away with anything. So Bernie would have to be so tough that he would project military strength as a response to any of the meddling that Putin might engage in, because it's the only way to keep peace. Number five, about banks and wealth. Oh boy, I don't think Bernie's going to be able to do this. This is going to be tough. But Bernie is going to have to disavow some of this bank hate of his and swing toward the middle for the general. Like the Glass-Steagall, Dodd-Frank kinds of things. Those are good things. Fix the problem of runaway capitalism, but not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Same thing with Wall Street. Tax capital gains, increase taxes at the super top of income, so there's less money to go into Wall Street. But don't wage war against wealth in the general. Because if you do, you're going to be playing right into Trump's hands. You're going to play right to his strategy. And you don't want to do that. Regarding ideology, Bernie needs to flip the script and just claim that the only ideology he has is helping the majority of Americans. Easy. And number seven, he needs to keep emphasizing his support of Israel and proposing that peace in the region through compromise is actually in Israel's best interest, as well as everybody else's. That's a winning strategy. Well, that's all for today. Check out the next episode, which I'm sure will blow your mind. I'm Dave Giorgio, and now here's some music for you. Enjoy life.